the next. So those that could not attend will be able to go over the topics that we discussed today. Again, if I mute you, it's not because I don't like you, just trying to make sure that we have as much order as we can during the meeting. Professor Brody typically already has something prepared to kind of start, just a topic maybe that was already presented during the week. Once that kind of goes, if you have questions, please do propose those in, propose those in the chat. I'll either ask them directly to Professor Brody, but every once in a while, we'll definitely have you come off of mute, and then turn your camera on so you can kind of have that dialogue with Professor Brody as well. So, sorry. All right, I think we're good. All right, Mark Beddix, if you have anything from the NCAA or anything, if not, we'll turn it over to Professor Brody.
No, I think we're good. Nothing from my end. Feel free to turn it over.
Professor Brody, all yours.
Thank you, Marcus. And thanks, everybody, as always, for coming. There were definitely some questions that were forwarded to me. So I'll go over some of those and a little bit of other things that I have to share, and then I'd like to open it up. And I would also like to apologize that got quite a few questions this week, and not all of them could I get to. So if I didn't get to your question, I'm sorry for that. Maybe we'll try and get to some of them here. Some of them are easier to pull up things live. Some things are a little bit harder. We'll try and do the best we can. Again, if you send questions to Clipped, it can be to support@clipped.io, and it's helpful for me if you tell me what league, what division, what gender, and whether it's a team or individual. Just makes it a little bit easier to look up. So a couple of questions came in regarding the event timing and the ranking impact. And the one question was, does the timing of a tournament have an impact on how it is weighted in the ranking? And the short answer is no. I was given a design directive in coming up with the ranking that events in the fall or the spring should count the same. There shouldn't be any time weighting, any priority on one versus the other. So in fact, the ranking algorithm does not know the date of any event. If you put the events in reverse order, mixed up the order, it won't matter in the ranking because it doesn't actually know any of the dates. So saying the same thing multiple ways, the same weight is applied to the fall and spring events. Assuming they're all 3-round events, if a team played 5 events in the fall and 2 events in the spring, just because you played more events in the fall would carry 5/7 the weight, the spring 2/7 of the weight. Apparently, some coaches think that there's a lot more ranking volatility now, and some others think that there's a lot less. Partly that's going to have to do with if you played only 2 events in the fall, you'll see more ranking volatility in the spring. And if you played 6 events in the fall, the first couple of events, you'll see less volatility because it's only 2 out of 8. So if it seems like there's less ranking change now, it's likely because fewer events were played in the fall compared to the spring so far. But if at the end of the season you played an equal number of events in the fall and the spring, they're going to have about the same impact. We do publish the ranking impact of each event to see how much that would affect your ranking. And that will decrease as the season progresses, because once you get to 10, 11, 12, 13 events, each new event has, 1/10, 1/12, 1/13 the total weight. So it's not going to affect the rankings that much. So overall, the ranking volatility will decline as the season progresses until we get to the end. And it's related to this next question. It seems like an arbitrary ranking is given in the fall and isn't properly adjusted. So the top bullet points kind of address that, but wanted to also reiterate that the rankings are rerun from scratch each week. That the reason for doing this is as more information comes in with the spring events, the strength of field of the fall events is going to change a little bit. You get more information about which teams were a little bit stronger than we thought they were in the fall, which teams were a little bit weaker than we thought they were in the fall. So sometimes these ratings, you go back and look at, well, we got 33 points for this event last week, but now we look at the same event this week and it says 33.5. Well, the reason for that change is the slight adjustments in that happens from rerunning from scratch every week. But the reason we're doing it is it's a little bit more accurate that way. A team could have played poorly in the fall, and that's not reflective of their overall strength necessarily, or whatever. So the updated values typically lead to minor changes in the points, but they do change. And I know some people have looked at that and wanted to explain why that's happening. Okay. There were some questions about points in certain events, and I want to go through that specific question. But here's an example from the fall. I picked 3 events of different strengths of field. These are quite different strengths of field. The Terrier Intercollegiate is the weakest, the Pat Lesser Harbottle is in the middle, and the Dale McNamara was the strongest of these 3 events. And the scale is strokes per round per player. So this is about a 1.5 stroke per round per player difference here. And this is a 2 stroke per round per player difference there. So stronger fields always award more points per team. And you need to do it on a per team basis, not total, because they could have more teams in one event than the other. Stronger fields almost always award more points for the middle finishing team. And there can be exceptions, because what do you mean by the middle when there's a bunch of ties? Stronger fields usually award more points. Oh, this should say to the winning team, not the middle finishing team, to the winning team. And the exceptions there are due typically to stroke differentials. So let me show you with this example how that works. I measure the strength of field by this field average strokes gained, which is here. And that's what we went over initially. If you're more comfortable with ranks, you can also see, if you look at ranks, that the median rank improves, the minimum rank improves, the maximum rank improves. So even if you just look at ranks, by any measure, the events are ordered from weakest to middle to the strongest as you go left to right. If you take a look at points per team, I don't know exactly how I did that by mistake. If you take a look at points per team, it increases with the strength of the event. So 20.5 points to Dale McNamara, 45 for the Illini at Medina, and then 56 for the Blessings. So the stronger events give out more points. And again, it's points per team because the Blessings only had 9 teams, whereas the others had 14 or 15. Okay, now if you take a look at win points, they increase. Second place points increase. Third place points do not. I'll come back to that. The middle finishing teams, the points increase. Next to last increase, last points increase. So position for position, the point awards increase with the exception of third. And what happened in third? Well, you take a look at the Blessings versus the Illini. The winner performed better and get more points. Second place performed better, but there's a big gap here between second and third didn't perform as well as third in the Illini. So third at the Blessings got fewer points than third, but then that gets adjusted, or that doesn't affect the middle and the bottom positions where the stronger event gets more points. So here, there's one exception, and that's if you compare third in one versus third in the other. And that exception is due to stroke differential. And here at the bottom, I actually show you the stroke differentials where you can see the difference between second and third at the Blessings was 7 strokes, and second and third at the Illini was 4 strokes. So that difference is what's causing the Blessings third place finisher to get fewer points. So that's typically the way things work. The recent question is about what happened with the Darius Rucker and the Silicon Valley events. And The stronger event by a little bit, by about a half a stroke per round per player. So this is not a big difference, but certainly the Darius Rucker is a little bit stronger by again. No, I didn't say half a stroke. I said that wrong. It's like -1 of this. It's almost 2 strokes. Sorry about that. So it is a significant difference, 2 strokes. If you take a look at the ranks also, the middle rank of this event was 86. The middle rank of the Darius Rucker was 16. So I take that back. A significant difference, whether you measure it in terms of field average, strokes gained, or rank. There is a difference in the number of teams. The Darius Rucker had 17 versus 10, which is why we look at points per team and not total points. Points per team, the Darius Rucker awarded 55 on average, the Silicon Valley 31. So the strength of field difference led to more points being awarded generally to the stronger teams. So if you take a look at first, that's an exception. We'll come back to that. Second, the Darius Rucker awarded more. Third, the Darius Rucker awarded more. The middle finisher, the Darius Rucker awarded more. Next to last awarded more, and last awarded more. So there is one exception, is that with the winning points. And the reason for that is the Darius Rucker, you can see how compressed these values are. And the winning score to the field was just 1 stroke difference. So the winner was 1 stroke better than the field average. Whereas in the Silicon Valley, the winner was 4.8 strokes, again, per round per player, better than the field average. That's an enormous difference. And you can also, if you'd rather see it in terms of strokes, the winning score in the Darius Rucker was 3 strokes better than the field average. Over here, the winning score was whatever that is, 14 strokes difference. So 3 versus 14, if you look at total strokes. And that's the reason that the winner of the Silicon Valley got more points than the winner of the Darius Rucker, because of stroke differential. So points per team lines up second, and all the other finishing positions line up. The exception is due to the exception at the winning position is due to that large stroke differential. So the team is getting points based on how well they played. And one reason, a couple reasons for this, but one is if you have a strong team playing in a weak event, and this is kind of their average performance, if you didn't give them this many points, you would be penalizing strong teams for playing in weaker events. This allows you to say to teams, you can play in strong events or weak events, and you're not going to be rewarded or penalized. So that's the reason. The other reason is that coaches were asking for a a stroke differential based system. Are there any questions on that before I move on to the next topic here?
I do. Just again, being selfish on the Zoom call, if I can ask like 2 questions about this specific example.
Yep.
The first one, so Pepperdine won the event at Silicon Valley, right? And they won by 30 shots, it would be. And I hate for you to have to start digging through team reports, but was their performance there? Obviously, it was much better than the rest of the field, but would that be a performance for them that was much better than their own expected performance?
Well, yeah, my guess is it's slightly better, but this was, who won? Was it Pepperdine?
Yeah, Pepperdine.
So let me, my escape not working here. Okay, my escape. So let me try and find Pepperdine. So this is D1 women?
Yeah, D1 women. I think they moved up to 9 this week. I know the ranking number typically helps you.
Okay, so there is Pepperdine. Thank you so much. Okay, come on here. So Pepperdine, we can see that the Silicon Valley was well above their average performance. So then you can kind of take a look at, how are they ranked, and what you see for the team ranked 9, they have this 56-4-2 win percentage against weaker teams. So there's only 4 weaker teams that they lost to, which you can see over here. It's those 4 are the exceptions, but there's 56 or 58 examples where they beat weaker teams. They only played 2 stronger teams, and they beat one and they lost to one. So there's just not much information there. So where Pepperdine is ranked, you can see it with the head-to-heads. Almost all of this is what you'd expect for a ranked 9 team, but you can also take a look at stroke differentials without regard to points. And if you just took a look at head-to-head stroke differentials, which is the same as adjusted scoring average, they would be ranked 9th. So if you ignore points completely and you ignore what happened in that event and the number of points, they would still be ranked 9th if you just took a look at scores. And that particular event, yeah, it helped them quite a bit. It moved them up 12 spots. But it moved them up to a place which looks exactly justifiable based on their season long play. So like I said, if I realize the points can be they're new and maybe a little bit hard to swallow. It's like, okay, they got 146 points. It looks like a lot. Well, that's a little bit more than the 93 that they got here, because you kind of look at ratios more than absolute point differentials. But if you don't want to consider points at all, take a look at this adjusted scoring average rank, and that matches exactly their NCAA or their national ranking.
Yeah. So then kind of more specific, I won't say more specific to this kind of scenario, but this is kind of the question I'm getting a lot just about every week, where coaches can kind of pick out 1 or 2 events. Here's a strong field, not a lot of separation, nobody got 146 points, and then here's this other event where a team blew out teams and got, again, 120, 130, whatever points, right? I think the question I keep getting is, again, coaches are all about their schedules. How should I schedule moving forward? I think in the past, the philosophy has always been schedule as hard as you can, and the object is to finish as high or win those events, right? So then you look at, kind of like you said in the Darius, where the middle ranked team is 16, the worst ranked, all of those teams are, again, unless you got a golf course that's going to completely separate them, they're going to bunch up. Would it be, and again, I don't know the best way to answer this or even ask it, but is it best to play a bunch of Dariuses and beat a bunch of top 50 teams, knowing that your stroke differential really may not get you anything from a point standpoint? Or is it better to do more like Silicon Valley's, where sure, we may be at risk of not running up the score, but that potential for 100.
Yeah, so you broke up a little bit at the end, and one of the things that I would say is that it's not the case that if you play in a strong event that the scores are going to bunch up. And you can take a look at, this example from the women, but it's the same with the men. The separation in the strong and weak events is very similar. And you can separate yourself in the strongest events, and it happens. If you take a look at this example, the separation in the strong and weak events is just very, very similar. And one way you can see this is looking at the winning score to the field. That's a measure of the separation, and it's 2 strokes here, 2.1 versus 2.9. If you take a look at the separation here, the biggest separation happens to be in the strongest event, 3.5. The smallest separation is in the weakest event at 2.1. So you can take a look at the separation, and it's just not true that this is what typically happens. So to the extent that, however, the committees work in the postseason and they want to see teams playing a strong schedule, that might be a reason to, but not because of this ranking. This ranking was designed so that if you play a weak schedule, you can still excel. If you play a strong schedule, you're not going to be penalized or rewarded for that. So This is a little bit of an exception, I think, because you could say, well, this is a big stroke differential there, which it is, 4.8, but also this is a much smaller stroke differential than you would typically see in this strength of an event. It just happened, and like I said, people are really good at finding the exceptions, and you could look at this as, yeah, well, there's a big stroke differential there, but it's also the case that there is an unusually small stroke differential at the Darius Rucker. Stroke differentials here of 3.5, stroke differential there of 2. 2.5 is maybe a more typical stroke differential that you'd expect to see.
Got it.
Okay, I want to talk about team performance variability. And I think this first statement is not in dispute, but I want to say it, and maybe it is. Teams have better performances, and I mean relative to their average, not finish position, relative to their average, should say, in some events, and worse performances in other events. Just like players have good days and bad days, and good events and bad events, so do teams. And I think this is important because there's a unstated assumption that a team that's ranked 10 always plays like a 10th ranked team. And that's just not true. It's inconsistent with the statement that a team ranked 10 is going to have some performances that are better than a 10th ranked team and some performances that are worse than a 10th ranked team. So here's why this matters. Team A, hypothetically is ranked 35 and beats Team X that's ranked 20, and that happens in one event. And I get so many questions that are the flavor, how can we be ranked 30? How can Team A be ranked 35 when they beat a team ranked 20? Shouldn't they be ranked higher than 35? So it's natural to think that Team A should be ranked higher, maybe even ranked 20 or better. But that doesn't take into account all the other things that happen. But just focusing on this information, here's what that thought process sort of doesn't take into account, which is Team X is ranked 20, but they could have played like a ranked 40 team in the event. And that's why this team is ranked 35, because they beat an equivalently 40 ranked team. So the ranking analysis needs to take into account all head-to-head results, not just this one. And you also need to take into account that a team ranked 20 doesn't always play like a team ranked 20. So we want to sort of try and quantify that. Does a team ranked 20 sometimes play like it's ranked 17 and sometimes like 23 in different events? Or does a team ranked 20 sometimes play like it's ranked 5 in some events and 50 in other events? So that's what I want to try and show on the next slides, some examples of this. So, and this is also related to the question of should you play in stronger events or not that Marcus just asked. So if you take a look at University of Georgia, D1 women's team, they are currently ranked 28th. And if you ignore, well, it's hard for me to do this, but if you ignore this one event, the Windy City, you would see, oh, look at how consistently they played in these 4 events, and in their strongest event, they came in last. Maybe it's a bad idea to play in strong events. And there have been a lot of questions like that. And more often it's, imagine that the Stanford Intercollegiate wasn't there and the Windy City was. Then they get the most points in their strongest events. And the natural conclusion is, let's play in strong events because, yeah, we can come in middle of the pack and we'll get more points than coming in, second in this weak event. But by putting these 2 examples together in University of Georgia, you can see in their 2 strongest events, one event they got their most points, the other event they got their least points. And why is that? Well, the strength of fields are pretty close, but they played well in one and they played poorly in another. So their season best performance at the Windy City, they played like a rank 12 team. And their season worst performance, they played like a rank 81 team. So that gives you a little bit of the sense of the variability and how in similarly strong events, the same team had a really good performance relative to their average and a really bad performance, again, relative to their average. So this is trying to give you some idea of how much variability there is in team performance and why the points kind of vary the way they do. Here's another example from D1 women's. This is Arizona State. These two events on the right here were almost identically strong. They line up. It's hard to tell the blue and the black, but one was the Windy City, and the other is the Darius Rucker that we're talking about. Arizona State's two strongest events were the Darius Rucker and the Windy City. Their best performance was in the Darius Rucker that they won, and they got 86 points. They played like a ranked 5 team. Their season worst performance was at the Windy City. They came in 10th out of 15. They got half the points, and they played like a ranked 37 team. So this is a team ranked 16. Sometimes they play like a ranked 5 team. Sometimes they play like a ranked 37 team. So in thinking about, when you beat a team, you also have to think about, well, was the team playing well or playing poorly? Because if you beat Arizona State, which, a bunch of teams beat Arizona State at the Windy City, but they played not like a ranked 16 team. They played like a ranked 37 team. Okay. So beating a ranked 16 team doesn't mean you should be ranked 15th or 14th or 30th, because effectively you beat a ranked 37 team. You beat a ranked 16 team that was playing like a ranked 37 team. And just to show this is not, this happens every gender, men and women in every division. This is a BYU men's D1 team example. They're currently ranked 46th. Their strongest two events were this National Invitational Tournament in brown and this REL Lambkin Invitational in blue. It's the two events over here on the right. Their season best performance was at the National Invite, where they came in 4th out of 18 teams, and they got 55 points. They played much better than their average. They're ranked 46th, but they played like a ranked 12 team. Their second worst performance, it's almost their worst one was over there. Their second worst performance was at the REL Lambkin. They came in 10th out of 16 teams, and they got 23 points, less than half, but they played like a ranked 70 team. So when you average all these results together, they're ranked 46, somewhere in between 12 and 70. Those were kind of their extremes. They should be ranked in between, somewhere in the middle, and they're ranked 46. Anyway, I hope that helps, because like I said, it matters for, I get so many questions that, we're ranked here and we beat this team ranked there. How is that possible? And this is trying to explain that teams play better in some events and they play worse in other events. And here it's a little bit easier to see, because I'm looking at events that are similar strength. It's harder when you're comparing a very strong event to a very weak event. It's much easier to see the difference when they're playing in two identically strong events. Anyway, so that's what I got there. Happy to open it up for other questions if you want to go through those.
I do want to boost Andy Walker's question here, kind of along the same lines. If you don't mind pulling, I think it's VCU D1 men. If you have the report, I think they're 39 this week.
BYU?
No, sorry, VCU, Virginia Commonwealth.
Oh, D1 men?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got to do the screen share. And as you might imagine, I'm looking at this for the first time.
Right, yeah. Yeah, they're 39 this week.
Thank you so much. That makes it easier to find. There they are. These are their players.
So it's essentially the question was this, and Andy, if you want to, you can come off of mute, pop up the video too. But I know we've talked about it. But essentially, so 2 weeks ago they won an event in Vegas, and they moved down 2, but a team that they beat moved up 1, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, and they were real similar to us. And my thing with this is I think there should still be a premium on winning, and it still looks like it's a premium on finishing 13th out of 14 and really strong events. but getting close to 12th place or whatever, and it's, do we, this makes it look like we should coach different. If we have a 2-shot lead with 1 hole to play, we're not trying to just win the tournament. We have to maybe take a chance on finishing 3rd, but trying to win by 5, so we don't get penalized for it.
Okay. So you're comparing this Las Vegas Invitational with, what was the other one?
No, with Las Vegas Invitational. So we were 45 going into Vegas. We win and go to 47. And
Yeah.
so we got penalized for winning the golf tournament. Pretty much is what happens. I mean, there's no way around that. If you go from 45 to 47, you went backwards. But a team that was 50 moved to 49, and we beat them in that tournament.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to swallow. So we should have finished 4th, maybe, so we could go to like 40. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the.
No, come on. That's not fair. If you take a look at the Lake Las Vegas Invitational, that is this one here, where it looks like you played right to your average performance, and this was your 3rd strongest event. It's kind of middle of the pack here. Those are kind of your middle events. You have a couple of strong events over here, and your weakest event is over there. And yeah, so if I can find this. So the Lake Las Vegas is this one that you're talking about. And yes, you won, but it was a weaker field event. And so when you take a look at the weaker field event, you got almost the same points for the 3rd place finish in the Hal Williams as the 1st place finish here, because there is about a stroke difference in the strength of field. So if you take a look at the Hal Williams and the Lake Las Vegas, so it's a little bit easier to look at these two. When the rank impact is no change or up 1, that's saying you're playing about your average. And the field average, actually, they were off by a little bit, and your score to the field was about the same. So you got almost the same points in both of those, because you played about average, and the overall rank impact was about no change, because those reflect your average performance. Your best event was in the Seminole. So even though you came in 3rd, it was a strong field that you beat the field by a fair amount. And so you got the most points, not because 3rd versus 1st, because it was 3rd in your strongest event. So the strongest event over here, you didn't get bonus points because you were playing in a strong event. You played in a strong event and you finished very well. So I wouldn't take the message here as, you should necessarily play in a strong event or whatever, but this was your best performance and you got the most points. If you take a look,
shouldn't there be a premium on winning tournaments?
Pardon?
Shouldn't there be a premium on winning tournaments, though? I mean, I don't know how the points or the algorithms, whatever, work, but I think there should still be a premium on winning tournaments.
Yeah. So here, there is an average premium on winning, but what it really is a premium for above average performances. There's not an explicit, if you finish 1st, you get a bonus. And that's something we could look into. But the way this is designed is there's a slight premium for above average performances, and slightly less of a penalty for below average performances. And so when you take a look at the leaderboard and how the points are awarded, it's not like you get 5 extra points as you go from 3rd to 2nd to 1st. You typically get 5 extra points and then 10 extra points and then 20 extra points as you move up the leaderboard. I know some coaches think there's already too much of a performance for winning. I can see where you're coming from, and I would certainly be open to exploring, what would the rankings be if there was an explicit, if you win, you get an extra bonus.
Yeah.
So you're right, that's currently not in the system, but it could be, we could certainly look into putting that in.
Yeah.
So,
Go
Andy,
ahead.
this is Mark Bedex at the NCAA.
Uh-huh.
Do me a favor and send John Baldwin a note about your feelings. Because part of the problem is, Mark Brody just said this, we are hearing way more that they feel like they, meaning coaches, which you're obviously one of. So that's why I need your opinion as well, that they
Right.
feel like there's too much of a bonus on the whole winning, quote unquote, and the fact that if you're playing a weaker event, people are getting rewarded too much just for winning, and as opposed to if you're playing how you do in a specific field. So the one thing we are going to do this summer will be we'll be working with directly with Mark Brody and taking into consideration comments that you're making and some of these other coaches, and then having him tweak the formula based on what everybody feels from a global standpoint is the best to address the
Right.
situations.
Because it looks
Yeah.
like, and obviously everyone said like everyone thinks that every system is going to be gamed somehow, and I don't know if you can or it can't, but we're looking at, obviously if you play a really strong field, you don't have to play well to be ranked high. And there's tons of examples in our rankings that, people that have beat 22 teams all year and lost to 80 are ranked in the top 60. And that's, in golf, I've been playing for a long time, 40 something years at every level that you could possibly play. And there's always the bottom line in golf is, did you beat the other players? Not did you gain strokes, or whatever to it. And so that's just, my concern is, I mean, we won 100, we beat 100. I think there's only one team that's got more wins than us, and that's Auburn. I'm not saying we're the number 2 team. I'm not being ridiculous saying we're a top 10 team, but there's got to be there has to be a premium for winning and beating people. I mean, because that's all you go against. You're playing against other teams. So if I beat another team, I can't go backwards, right? I'm not saying I jump up 30.
So that part is, yeah, I agree with almost everything there. But what happens when you take a look at teams, sometimes teams ranked 38, 39, and 14, 40 are in a virtual tie. And things can happen where you play well, but a team behind you plays even better. Or you could play poorly and a team behind you plays even worse, and you can move up. So as a way to address that, that's what this chart is supposed to show, because you're talking about why did we move 2 positions here versus that? It depends on what everybody else did. If you take a look at this, you have 99 wins here against weaker teams. You also have 8 losses against weaker teams. So this win-loss and tie percentage of 925 against weaker teams, and you're also 2-5-1 against stronger teams, which meant you haven't played that many teams that are stronger than you, but you've lost to most of them. So I look at this as, in this green region, is a rank of 39 fair for Virginia Commonwealth? Well, it would be fair if you beat weaker teams, which is what happens here. It would be fair if you lose to better ranked teams, which is what happens there. And if there is a small and roughly equal number of upsets, which happens here and here. So you've got 99 examples of where you beat weaker teams.
Right.
You have 5 examples of where you lost to stronger teams, and there's 10 upsets. The 10 upsets are the 8 losses to weaker teams and the 2 wins against stronger teams. So you actually have more losses against weaker teams than you do have wins against stronger teams. To me, I can't see why 39 is not approximately a fair rank just based on win-loss and tie records.
I'm not saying it's an approximate fair rank. I'll just warn about the Vegas one in particular. But in the last 2 weeks, we beat 3 ranked teams ranked higher than us, and we only have 2 wins against them. South Florida was ranked higher than us in Vegas, and we beat them. And then we beat Arkansas, which was ranked 7th by 15, and Mississippi that was 22 by 30 in the last 2 weeks. So I don't know how. So we may have to check the accuracy.
Yeah. So here's my win-loss and tie record that I have you beating these 2 teams that were ranked better than you.
So Andy, South Florida dropped below you guys.
So, but when we beat them, they weren't.
No, this is done with the current ranks, not with what the ranks were at the time.
Correct.
Because I'm saying, because there was a lot of teams that were ranked ahead of us that we smoked all year. That's why
Well,
we
they moved
moved from where
backwards.
we're at to where we're at now. So
So if that's the case, they moved backwards and you moved up relative to them. So I think that would be consistent with what you would hope.
yeah. But what I'm saying, if you have, say the NCAA tournament coming up basketball, they say you beat, 10 top 20 teams or whatever. If you get ranked above them, it doesn't mean you lost to 10 top 20 teams. You still beat 10 top 20 teams at the time you played them.
Yeah, so I can clarify that, Andy. So technically, no, they don't do that. When you see that and you're reading all the different, like John Lenardi, when they're referring to like, in the net, they're talking about quad one wins. Teams move in and out of the quad based on where they are at the time. So if you beat somebody at the beginning of the year and then they end up on a 20-game losing streak and then therefore they're terrible, you don't get credit for a quad one win. You get credit for whatever the win is at the time of selections or the time, like right now you're having a discussion. So again, for basketball, men's and women's, it's based 100% on where they are right now, not when you play them.
Fair enough. So then that would mean that if North Carolina or Auburn loses to anybody, since they've been 1-2 all year, they haven't beat anyone stronger than them.
Correct.
Okay.
Hey, Andy, John Baldwin here. You don't need to send me an email. I've heard the conversation, so I'll save you that time. So
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be combative. I'm just trying to figure out, like, my thing is do we now coach different coming down the stretch? That's one thing that we've been talking about. In Vegas, should we have them send it on 18 to try and win by 5 or make sure that we win by 1?
Yeah. No,
Right.
I think that's a good thought. I think what we've tried to communicate all year is, our committees are going to continue to look at all the things that everybody's talking about. I know that especially the coaches on our committees are hearing from their peers, colleagues around every turn with different thoughts, and some are similar to yours, some are opposite of yours. I know in Division I, we also plan to send out a survey this spring to get some thoughts from coaches and compile feedback as we head into summer meetings. And as Bedex mentioned, we'll be discussing this as a primary topic as we get into our meetings this summer and look ahead to next year. So yeah, I appreciate the feedback, but yeah, you don't have to type something up and send it to me. So we're all good there.
Yeah. So with all that being said, it's not like I'm sitting there saying we're a top 10 team in the country. I'm not, I'm pretty realistic, and I think we're, probably a little better than 39, but, no more than 6 or 7 spots, just trying to figure out how, some of the movement happens and why.
Yeah. And I think, Mark brought up the net ranking, Bedex brought up the net ranking for basketball. And that's one that obviously gets a lot of attention, especially this time of year. But the reason that movement happens isn't just because of what happens in one event, because there's simultaneous events that are taking place all over the country and entered into that same weekly ranking process. And so I think it's been alluded to a little bit, but those things impact the rankings as well. And so there are other rankings where you win a game and you move down because other events, other opponents happen, those types of things. And that impacts it as well, because it's not just your event in a vacuum, so to speak. And right. I know you're aware of that, but I also understand that you win an event and you look up and you fall in the ranking, that yeah, I can understand where you're coming from and where the questions are there for sure.
And I totally, that one is 100%. I understand that there's other events, and so if someone else plays well, my thing is if I'm ranked 2 in the country and you're ranked 3 in the country and I beat you in the same tournament and we flip-flop, that's a that one is that's a hard one to understand by any measure there. So, but I appreciate you guys answering and taking the time listening to my complaints.
So here's one other thing that I would add. I don't know if this helps at all, but oops, is that there? Let me go up a little bit here. If you take a look at this ordering of teams, you can also see how close you are. Because you said you're not saying you're a top 10 ranked team, but maybe you're 6 higher. The difference between 39 and 34 is a half a point. Those are very, very tightly bunched. And no ranking system in the world is going to, I would not die on a flag saying, you're 39th for sure, and University of Missouri Columbia is 34th, and no other ranking system would come up with a different order than that. I would look at this and say, these teams are so close that there's virtually no difference between 34th to 40th, whereas there's a big jump, relatively speaking, at 32. The difference between 34 and 32, you can kind of see that as a 2.5 point difference there. So when you talk about a movement of one position this way or that way, when you've got 5 teams that are in a virtual tie, I wouldn't make much of that. I wouldn't get too frazzled. I wouldn't get too excited. I wouldn't get too disappointed.
Yeah, I just for us being a mid-major, it's more than not being frazzled. I mean, those are bonuses that on our end, and those are, being top 30 versus being closer to top 40 are invites for us that we get into the tournaments historically that we haven't gotten into. And so it does seem small, and I know it's like, 39, it could be 34. Well, if it could be 34 and it should be 34, that's costing me. Right. So maybe my guys.
So maybe I should phrase it a little bit differently, which is all the numbers go in and that's what comes out. It's not like I'm saying 39 should be 34. I'm just saying that they're so close that that's the best I could do with the way the ranking system is designed. And I'm acknowledging that there are small differences in some rankings, some ranks there. Not to say I think it should be flipped. I'm saying I think it should be the way it is, but I'm acknowledging that they're close.
Yeah, I got you. Thanks for your answers.
I appreciate it. Let's see if we can get to a couple more questions too before we wrap up here. I know Sloan sent one over by email, and kind of same question in the chat here. Hopefully it's a shorter one. But if a higher ranked team beats a lower ranked team in match play, is it possible that the higher ranked team would lose points? And again, I'm assuming we're talking about our points average. Would their points average go down if they were if they beat a lower ranked team?
Yeah, and the answer is absolutely not. It would happen the way you would expect, and the reason is there are no stroke differentials in match play. You either win, lose, or tie, and it's always the case that if a higher ranked team beats a lower ranked team, the higher ranked team's weighted average points will increase by a little bit. So the team could move down in the ranking depending on what other teams do around them. But in terms of your own weighted average points, beating a lower ranked team, no matter how low, your weighted average points will always improve. It's not to say your rank will improve, but your weighted average. So you will tend to improve. You will either likely stay the same or possibly improve in the rank. But what I can say for sure is your weighted average points will definitely improve.
I want to try to lump these two together because they're somewhat related. First question is, will removal of the multiplier conversion be discussed for future years? Again, I think we're talking about what we've always talked about, which is the D2 to D1 or D3 to D2 points kind of deal. And then very similarly, Mike Bracken asked a question about explaining the NJCA rankings, talking about Daytona State women's. I kind of took a glance at their schedule, and essentially Daytona State women have played in all D1, I think maybe D1, D2 event. So a lot of their points have been converted. Again, it looks like they've played pretty well, finishing middle of the pack in a lot of those D1 tournaments as well. So I can kind of see why they've gotten a lot of points, but again, kind of around that conversion topic, I guess. Will it be discussed for future years?
Yeah, so it will be discussed, and Daytona is women. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, NJCAA women's.
NJCAA team women. And again, I'm bringing this up for the first time, so you're going to be seeing it right when I do. And so there it is. So oh, they're first.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. So this is what it looks like. And here, because Daytona is playing a bunch of NCAA events, you see teams that are stronger than them. So if you're playing in D1, chances and you're ranked 1, you're playing weaker teams typically. Here, if you're in NJCAA, and you're playing out of your league, yeah, you can be playing stronger teams. And here you can kind of see their average performance, and the same thing with win, loss, and tie. So against weaker teams, 769 win percentage, 39-9. Against stronger teams, 11, 44-1. So a much better win percentage against weaker teams, much worse against stronger teams. And about or almost exactly equal number of upsets where they've lost 9 times to weaker teams. That's over here. And they've won 11 times against stronger teams. So this is sort of very consistent with where the rank is, even if you considered their out of division play. So do they have any in division play? I don't even see any.
In the late and where they finished last and got, again, the points were converted, they got 46 points. But again, as I'm kind of looking at their team profile here, that's their second
worst.
That's the second worst performance, if I'm not mistaken. Again, the rest of their, again, in these D1 or D2 fields, they're finishing, middle of the pack, or not last at least. But in that one, they did finish last and got 46 points after it was converted. So, but that's kind of the event being used as an example.
Yeah, the Lady Paladin was their worst performance. They got the fewest points. It wasn't necessarily because they finished last, but it's because of their strokes gained in the event. But this is an example. When you take a look at the rank impact of these events and you see no change, this is a very consistently performing team that they've kind of validated their performance with. If you take a look at their average, this blue dashed line, they're a little bit above, a little bit below, but they're getting a very consistent number of points in almost every event, except for maybe this last one, where they came in middle of the pack. Oops, they came in middle of the pack and they got, sorry about that. They came in middle of the pack and got 100, but you're sort of very, very consistent play. If they didn't have this one event where they came in 10th and they got this, they would have been ranked second in the league, second in NJCAA. And this is Seminole, who's playing mostly within their own division. And you can see kind of roughly similar kind of win, loss, and tie records. Or maybe roughly explainable, I guess, win, loss, and tie records. But they're also playing some NCAA Division I and Division II events, and their performance is also roughly consistent across these different strength events. So I don't know if that helps for, but like I said, there is, all of these points are converted to NJCAA Division I points. So Daytona is not getting a bonus for playing out of the division. If you take a look at Seminole State College of Florida, all of these are NJCAA D1 converted points, and they're also not getting a bonus for playing out of their division. So I don't know if that helps for.
Yeah,
For Mike.
again, I think just because of the topic, I don't know if if you can look at Eastern Florida State. So same one, NJCAA women, Eastern Florida State. I think again, whether it's going to be accepted or not, I think the concern is that other teams, again, within their division are playing events, winning them, and then receiving 2 points, 3 points, whatever it may be, while the other teams play well, and gain 46, after what looks like a conversion or is a conversion. So again, I think it's the same concern that we've talked about.
So here, this is great. Eastern Florida State, again, their win in by far their weakest event. This is an enormous difference in strength of field. So this Wallace State Fall Invitational was their weakest event, and they got basically the same points in that event. So that event is the Wallace State Fall Invitational, and they're getting 7.5 points. Their weighted average points is 7.8. So they got almost their average points, and it's very similar points that they got within the division, in the NAIA events, in the NCAA events. These are all very similar points, meaning from 5 to 12 is very small variation within a factor of 2, and it averages 7.8. So they're getting close to their average points in and out of their division. And I also have this other thing that I'm computing here. What would their rank be if you got rid of all of their out of division or out of league events? And they would be 7th instead of 5th. So yeah, it makes a little bit of difference, and mainly because of these 1 or 2 events here that they played particularly well, but it's not making a boatload of difference. It's 2 ranking positions. Again, not because they're playing out of division, but because they played well. They happened to play well. That was their best event, and that was the second best event there. But they got almost the same points in their other events. And again, you want to look at them all as on this NJCAA converted points scale. So anyway, thanks for pointing that one out, Marcus. But again, I'm looking at this win, loss, and tie record against weaker teams. They're 14-2-0. That's their 14 wins there. Against stronger teams, they've lost 42 times. So there's 5 exceptions, 2 on the weaker side and 3 on the stronger side, where they beat 3 stronger teams and they lost to 2 weaker teams. But in terms of just looking at win, loss, and ties, forgetting anything about points, their rank of 5 seems kind of reasonable.
Awesome.
I think anyway.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think that kind of covers what we had in the chat. Again, we're right at 12:30, which seems like a good time to wrap it up as well and let everybody get back to their afternoon. As always, appreciate everybody's time for joining, especially Professor Brody as well for being generous with his time. We'll do this again on March 29th, so 2 Fridays from now. And yeah, good luck everybody in your events coming up.
Good luck. Thanks for your questions.
Thanks, everyone.